Tyranitar for years have been one of the most iconic staples of competitive Pokemon. It probably has one of the best stat distributions ever created for a Pokemon. None of its stats are really wasted in one specific slot. All of its stats are put to good use, which is why it's been always a competitive staple. It's bulky enough to be a bulky defensive monster, and its ability to Sandstream properly gives it a further boost to its special defensive stats. And offensively, it is really threatening enough with one Dragon Dance to take over matches. Tyranitar is super versatile, and that's why you've seen it in the OU since its days in Generation 2, going back almost 20 years now. But for the first time ever, Tyranitar has felt in OU and stayed in UU for quite a bit of time. What happened to this Pokemon? Just not even a year ago, everyone was talking about how great this was in Generation 8. Well, okay, to be fair to Tyranitar somewhat, in the beginning of Generation 9, Tyranitar was probably one of the best Pokemon, solely due to the Sandstream ability. This was the peak of Sand teams in Generation 9 so far, and all thanks to Houndstone. As you guys are all sure, Houndstone had the move of Last Respects and the ability of Sand Rush, and I'm pretty sure you guys can guess what happened next. It was a nightmare to say the least. Houndstone got banned in a couple of weeks and left Tyranitar by its side, and with no real Sand abusers in the meta right now, already its viability was put into question. What hasn't been put into question though is subscribing to Chompy to stay up to date on videos such as this. Seriously, I promise you guys won't regret it. I mean, 4,000 plus of you guys have not regretted it so far. So join in and don't regret missing on videos like this. Anyways though, let's start talking about its typing of Rock and Dark. Probably the biggest reason holding this Godzilla Pokemon back currently. Rock and Dark isn't particularly a good typing, having a lot of common weaknesses throughout the metagame, with the 4x weakness to fighting really standing out. But this was all made even with Tyranitar's huge bulk. I mean, just look at it. Its splits of 100, 110, and 100, that's like amazing bulk for a Pokemon like this, and its flexibility both physically defensive and specially defensive is nothing to sneeze at. However, let us look at some recent Pokemon that have been introduced in Generation 9. Roaring Moon, a fast Paradox Pokemon that has coverage such as Earthquake and U-Turn, and sure, it's not going to auto-hit KO it in one turn, but this is something to keep in mind of because it will deal a lot of damage. Iron Valiant, another blistering fast glass cannon Pokemon similar to Roaring Moon, who likes to run either physical or special sets, and Moonblast, Aura Sphere, or Close Combat aren't particularly good moves to switch into. Let me do one last example, and that is probably the most infamous Pokemon, Great Tusk, so far roaming around in the OU tier. Great Tusk is an amazing Pokemon, and with it particularly being everywhere with its high usage stat, a Close Combat or EQ from Great Tusk isn't particularly nice to switch in or stay against, especially with its massive 131's attack stat. There are other new Pokemon introduced in this generation, such as Meowscarada, Quaquaval, and Goldango, and more, that have super effective coverage against this Pokemon, and making switching in and staying in for Tyranitar a bit harder than before. Yeah, sure, it's a bulky tank. It will take a lot of those hits and beat him up kind of semi-well at times, but it's not going to live against these foes forever, and eventually will be worn down throughout the match more convincingly in this generation than past generations, and this is a lot asking for even this Pokemon to just stay in and tank all these hits. This is not even to mention Walking Wake and the power of rain teams, especially with it not being banned right now. So Tyranitar touching OU in the foreseeable future isn't likely going to happen. And I haven't even mentioned old Pokemon that have been threatening this thing. Its typing of Rock and Dark is truly holding it back. And don't believe me? Well, let's look at another new Pokemon that frankly was made to beat Tyranitar 2.0. And yeah, you guessed it, that's right, I'm talking about Garganacl, a pure rock typing with the added benefit of its ability of Purifying Salt. Purifying Salt allows for such game-changing viability, taking half from Ghost-type moves for some odd reason, which I don't know why, and immune to status moves. This means, unlike a Tyranitar, you cannot Toxic Stall this Pokemon, and sure, it doesn't have Sandstream to boost its special defense, but I would argue Purifying Salt alongside its already incredible stats is kinda better if you're looking for a tanky Rock-type Pokemon such as Garganacl. Garganacl also gets a move of Salt Cure, which is like Toxic but on steroids, dealing chip damage on every single turn till the opponent switches out, with Water and Steel type Pokemon taking even more damage. It can't even be blocked by any Pokemon, and on top of that, it's a nuisance and annoyance to deal with every time. And for the cherry on top, Garganacl can even heal itself back up with Recover, something Tyranitar cannot do, and this allows Garganacl to be an absolute wall in the meta. There was a reason why people for a time being on the Smogon forums clamored for this thing to be banned because of its difficulty to get rid of, something I don't think anyone has heard about Tyranitar about. With these key factors of being a pure rock type, taking half from ghost damage, purifying salt, and being immune to status, as well as salt cure and its signature move of recover, there isn't any real concrete reason to put this thing below Tyranitar as a bulky rock type wall. Sure, Tyranitar can be more offensively imposing with its vast move pool and pretty good stats even for this generation and the absurd power creep lately, but it's not like Garganacl has bad offensive stats either. It gets body press to take advantage of its defensive prowess, not to mention Salt Cure, which hits every Pokemon and the chip damage is always the same, and you got Recover to basically heal it back up and be an infinite wall against your opponent, so it's really not that bad compared to Tyranitar offensively. Just call Garganacl already the improved version of Tyranitar. With no sand abuses like Excadrill or Houndstone, its typing became more of a definite reason of holding it back more so than ever, and with the rise of Garganacl, things have been looking bleak for Tyranitar, and I'm not sure myself if it can ever regain its supremacy in the OU tier as it once did. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about the fall of Tyranitar, and watch these competitive videos over here as well.